She saved my life when we were young, pulled me out of a reservoir with her bare hands, and in return, I destroyed hers. I forced her into marriage. I took everything she had, and when I'd taken enough, I tried to sell our own child. That night, she carried our baby to the reservoir and didn't come back. In my past life, Lu Ruyan, the most gorgeous girl in the village, had saved me from drowning in the reservoir, and in return, all I ever gave her was pain. I forced her into marriage. Even when she was at her weakest after giving birth, I sent her out into freezing cold water to catch fish. Still, she never once asked for a divorce. She just kept quietly planning ways to make our lives better. But when my gambling debts spiraled completely out of control, I made the most disgusting decision of my life. I decided to sell our own daughter. The moment Lu Ruyan heard that, something inside her shattered completely. She grabbed our 1-year-old baby, walked straight to that reservoir, and jumped in. She didn't come back. After she was gone, reality hit me like a freight train. Even after I clawed my way up to becoming a billionaire, I rejected every woman who came near me. I poured every single dollar and every ounce of my power into one thing: time machine research. I needed to go back. I needed to save my innocent Lu Ruyan. Maybe God actually took pity on me. As I lay dying in my bed, I felt the time machine pulling me backward. When I opened my eyes, I was really there. 30 years in the past, Lu Ruyan was huddled in the corner of the room, trembling with fear. I rubbed my eyes hard. When I was finally sure this wasn't some dying hallucination, I let out a cry I couldn't hold back. "Ruyan, is it really you?" I stepped toward her, and she screamed, "Stay back! Don't you dare touch me!" The raw terror in her voice froze me solid. It hit me instantly. I knew exactly what point in time this was. This was the day she had borrowed money from her family just to buy food for the baby, and I had snatched every coin from her hands. Drunk out of my mind, I had been absolutely ruthless with her. The memory turned my stomach. I hated myself so much in that moment that I started slapping myself across the face, hard, over and over, 101 times. Blood started seeping from my lips. Lu Ruyan watched in silence, tears in her eyes. Then she let out a bitter, hollow smile. He probably doesn't even remember how many times he's done this routine. Every time the alcohol wore off, I dropped to my knees, put on the same pathetic show, begged for forgiveness, and then changed absolutely nothing. She could survive anything I put her through, but watching her baby cry from hunger, that was the one thing she couldn't take. Right then, our daughter's wailing cut through my thoughts like a blade. I couldn't just stand there anymore. I grabbed my clothes off the floor and said as calmly as I could manage, "Ruyan, just wait. I'll be right back with something for the baby to eat." Then I sprinted toward the only shop in the village. This young body had energy I hadn't felt in decades. I made it there without even breaking a sweat. Old man Huang looked up from the counter the second he saw me, flashing his yellow teeth. "Well, well. You back for more liquor, same as usual, or you mixing it up today?" In my previous life, I had enough wealth to buy out an entire baby food factory. But right now, I didn't have a single coin in my pocket. I looked down, ashamed. "Uncle Huang, I need some milk powder for the baby. I'll pay you back everything tomorrow, I promise." His eyes went wide. He let out a long, heavy breath and muttered under it, "Poor girl." Lu Ruyan was the most beautiful, most talented girl in this whole region, and she ended up with this deadbeat. She's suffering. Now the baby's suffering too. Without another word, he handed me the milk powder. I thanked him and ran back home at full speed. The second I stepped into the courtyard, our daughter's crying hit me from inside the room. I rushed in and held up the bag. "Ruyan, look, I got milk powder for the baby." She looked up. The moment she saw what was in my hand, she pulled our daughter tighter against her chest and went completely defensive. Her pale face flooded with that same deep, desperate fear. "I'm warning you right now. Don't you even think about selling my baby? If you try, I will take her and myself out of this world." Her voice broke something in me. I stood there frozen. A flashback hit without warning. In my past life, it was right around this same time, I had actually arranged to sell our daughter to a couple in exchange for drinking money. I was a monster. There's no other word for it. My chest caved in. I bent down, set the bag of note powder on the cracked little table, and forced myself to speak through the tightness in my throat. "Ruyan, I know what I was. A failure. An animal. But trust me, I will never sell our daughter. Tomorrow morning, I'm going into town and I'm finding work. That's a promise." Her eyes held confusion, and beneath that, something much heavier, doubt. And she had every right to it. I'd made promises like this before. Empty ones. Every single time. I didn't push it. I walked out of the courtyard without another word. If my memory was right, this was the exact spot, in my past life, where Ruyan had run from, carrying our daughter toward the reservoir. She had tied heavy stones to her body so there would be no chance of surviving. The thought sent a cold shock straight through me. Thank God I'm not too late. I can fix this. I just need to move fast, earn money, and actually show up for my family the way they deserve. But right now, the house had zero food in it. I needed to find fresh meat somehow, to help Ruyan and the baby rebuild their strength. I looked toward the south mountain at the edge of the village, and something clicked. I remembered there were wild pheasants up on that mountain, plenty of them. In my old life, I was so lazy I would have starved before I ever went hunting. But that wasn't who I was going to be this time. Pheasant broth is like medicine for women recovering postpartum and for babies. And whatever I didn't use at home, I could sell at the market. I hiked up to the mountain and improvised a slingshot, pulled the elastic from my waistband, snapped a Y-shaped branch off a tree, and got to work. In my past life, after I got rich, I'd spent serious time at shooting ranges. My aim was still muscle memory. It took a little while to get back into the rhythm, but once I did, I had a groove. Within a few hours, I'd taken down several small birds and one massive wild rooster. I tied up my catch and started heading home, and then every single piece of it vanished off my back. I stopped dead. What in the... That's when I noticed it. The lucky charm Ruyan had given me, hanging at my chest, was glowing, a soft, pulsing golden light. She had carried that charm with her everywhere. Right up until the moment she died. Confused, I reached out and touched it. Everything shifted. I was standing in some kind of magical pocket dimension. After a few minutes of testing it out, I figured out exactly what it was. A secret storage space. Because apparently, the universe looked at my lifetime of catastrophic marital failures and decided, you know what this deadbeat really needs to redeem himself? A magical, interdimensional fanny pack. With this ability, making money in the years ahead was going to be child's play. Ruyan, just hold on a little longer. I'm going to give you everything luxury and power. On my way back home, I noticed that most of the houses in the village had electricity now. Ours was still running on a beat-up old oil lamp. That hit me harder than I expected. Just one more thing on the long list of ways I had failed her. I went straight to the kitchen and cleaned the game before it got dark, throwing together a solid, hearty soup. A little while later, I walked into the main room with a big bowl of that hot soup and called out, Ruyan, come eat. I made this especially for you. I called 3 times before she slowly came out of her room. She stopped the moment she saw the soup on the table. She didn't come any closer, just stood there, staring at me with this look that was equal parts hatred and suspicion. Seeing her in those old, patched-up clothes broke something in me all over again. Even in the middle of all this misery, she was stunning. And I, the villain of her story, had completely destroyed her life. I knew there was no way she'd trust this sudden change in me. Her guard being up made total sense. I was going to have to earn her trust back, slowly, one action at a time. I also knew that if I just stood there, she wouldn't touch the food, so I gave her a calm smile and said, Ruyan, take your time and eat. There's more in the kitchen. If you need anything, just call me. Then I turned around and walked out without another word. After I left, Lu Ruyan stood completely still. She stared at the steam rising from that bowl like she was trying to figure out if she was dreaming. Was this some kind of last meal? Because her whole history with me was that whenever there was something decent to eat in the house, I ate it alone, and she got whatever scraps were left, washed down with water. Even though her energy was completely drained and she was starving, she couldn't bring herself to eat. My behavior was too strange, too different. She drifted quietly to the bedroom doorway and peeked out. She could see me sitting outside, drinking soup. Then her eyes moved to the big wild rooster hanging by the kitchen door. She understood. I had hunted it on the mountain. I hadn't stolen it. That small realization settled something in her. She went back inside and quietly drank the soup. It had been so long since she'd had a real meal that she ended up eating a bit more than she planned, let out a little burp and everything. When I came back in afterward and started silently washing all the dishes, Lu Ruyan just stood there, completely blank. I had never done a single domestic chore in my life. Not once. When I was done, I boiled a big pot of water, carried it to the bedroom and said, Ruyan, use this warm water to clean up a little. I set it down and walked back out before she could even react. I sat down in the courtyard and looked up at the sky, already running numbers in my head. I needed a real system for making money, and fast. Winter was right around the corner and temperatures here could drop to 4 degrees F. If I didn't get warm clothes and blankets sorted out soon, Ruyan and the baby were going to freeze. Then, from inside the room, the sound of water went quiet. I stepped in to swap out the water, and the second Ruyan saw me, she panicked. She scrambled to cover herself and backed away, yelling, Don't come near me. That reaction hit me like a gut punch. I was furious at myself. I knew this kind of trauma doesn't just disappear overnight. The only way to make her feel safe was through consistent action, not words. I kept my voice soft. Hey, I'm not going to touch you. I just came to take the used water out. Don't back up, you're going to fall. I leaned down, picked up the basin, and walked out quietly. Ruyan didn't even glance in my direction. The second I was gone, she got dressed quickly. Back in the courtyard, I sat down and really started thinking. What was the fastest way to get out of this hole? That's when a memory from my past life surfaced. Some outsiders had once come through looking for a guide to take them up the mountain, and they had hired me. Easy money just for showing them around. What I remembered now, what I hadn't appreciated at the time, was what they were collecting up there. Strange plants and herbs throughout the dense forest. Back then, I had written them off as city weirdos hoarding weeds. but now I knew exactly what those herbs were worth. My energy shot up like a switch had been flipped. I grabbed a flashlight, picked up my tools, and headed straight into the dark, dangerous mountain in the dead of night. And luck was absolutely on my side. Along with collecting those rare herbs, I stumbled across a wild civet cat den. I hunted them on the spot, separated the pelts from the meat, and stored everything in my magical storage space. First thing the next morning, I grabbed my baskets and headed into the town market. When nobody was looking, I pulled out the civet meat and pelts from my storage and set up in a busy spot to sell. The demand was immediate. Everything sold out fast. 12 yuan went straight into my pocket. From there, I went directly to the oldest and most established pharmacy in town. The moment I laid those rare herbs on the counter, the old manager with his thick glasses went wide-eyed. He held them up in the sunlight, analyzing the quality with careful, practiced eyes. Then he put on a sly smile and made his offer. "Young man, I'll give you this much for these." My expression went flat the second he named his price. He thought he was dealing with some clueless village kid he could lowball into the ground. Without a word, I reached out to take my herbs back. The old man's reflexes were sharp. He grabbed my wrist immediately. "Whoa, young man, no need to rush. If the price doesn't work for you, we can negotiate." The whole time he was talking, he was reading my face. And when he saw the kind of cool confidence in my eyes that had no business being on someone my age, he knew he wasn't going to pull a fast one on me. He caved. 6 great Unity notes. Final offer. Not a cent more. I knew the actual market value of these herbs was significantly higher, but the problem was I needed cash today. The main city was too far, and there were no more buses running. My wife and baby were at home hungry. I made the call right then and there. In a completely relaxed tone, I said, "Deal." 60 yuan in that era was serious money, equivalent to about 2 months of wages for an average worker. And I didn't go straight home. First, I tracked down some black market dealers and secured ration coupons and meat vouchers. In that era, those tickets were worth more than cash. Then, I bought the best quality milk powder I could find for the baby, along with a good stock of pork. After that, I went to a clothing store and had them wrap up one of the most fashionable dresses and skirts at the time. I already knew Ruyan was going to look absolutely stunning in it. After all, who doesn't deserve to feel beautiful? On the way back, I ran into an old hunter I recognized. I also traded some of my rations for the old hunter's vintage hunting rifle. In an area where finding meat was this tough, a rifle was going to be my single best survival tool. The moment I got home, I went straight to the kitchen and started putting together a solid dinner for my family. As it got dark outside, Lu Ruyan came home, baby tied to her back, a few cornbread rolls in her hand. The second she stepped into the courtyard, the smell of fresh meat hit her. She stopped at the kitchen doorway and looked at me with ice-cold eyes. My sudden change in behavior over the past day was freaking her out, like something out of a horror movie. Her first thought at seeing the meat was that I must have won some gambling game again. In the past, whenever I'd win a little money, I'd get exactly this kind of overexcited energy. But after the losing streaks, I'd turn into a monster and take every bit of that rage out on her. She was completely drained after a full day of work. She didn't have the energy to analyze whatever act I was putting on. She went quietly to her room, set the cornbread aside, and laid the sleeping baby down on the bed. Then her eyes landed on it, an expensive can of milk powder sitting on that busted little table. Her mind went completely blank. She came flying into the kitchen and, without a single word, slapped me clean across the face. Smack. I stood there in total shock, still holding the plate of fresh meat. Before I could get a word out, I saw it, tears streaming down Lu Ruyan's face. I quickly set the plate down and reached out to wipe her tears. She took 2 sharp steps back. I kept my voice steady. "What's wrong? Did I do something? You're still in recovery. Don't put this kind of stress on yourself." Her lips started trembling, and she yelled out in a desperate, breaking voice, "Did you go to my family again? Did you bully my mother into giving you this money?" That hit me like ice water. In my past life, I had actually done exactly that. Showed up at her family's door and terrorized them into handing over cash. I understood immediately why she was panicking. "No, Ruyan, I swear, I didn't do anything like that." She wasn't buying a single word of it. "Don't lie to me. If you didn't do that, then where did you get the money to buy this milk powder? You think I don't know what that costs?" "I earned it myself," I said, and in my rush to prove it, I reached toward my waistband where I tucked the money away. That move made everything 10 times worse. She thought, in the middle of this serious moment, that I was having some disgusting thought. She slapped me again, harder. I genuinely didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Apparently, trying to hand over hard-earned cash was now triggering the same defensive mechanisms as a flasher in a dark alley. Note to self, establish verbal consent before aggressive waistband rummaging. "Royan, that's not what I'm thinking. I'm just trying to show you the money." I pulled the 50 yuan out from my waistband and placed it directly in her hand. The second she registered the amount, her whole system crashed. She started swaying, losing her balance. I reached out to steady her. She shoved me away hard. She still thought I had stolen it. The terror rising in her eyes made my heart pound. I launched into a full explanation, desperate for her to hear me out. Ruyan, listen to me. Last night I went up the mountain. I found some rare Shihu herbs up there. I took them into town and sold them, 60 yuan total. 10 went to supplies, and these 50 yuan right here are what's left. That's it. That's all of it. The moment she heard Shihu, something shifted behind her eyes. She knew the medical value of Shihu herbs was extremely high, and that finding them was nearly impossible. Had his luck actually been that good? Had she accused him without reason? She stared at me, deep in confusion. To seal it, I raised my right hand and swore, Ruyan, I did not commit any crime. If I'm lying, may God strike me down right now. She looked into my eyes and saw something she hadn't expected. Finally, she exhaled. One long, slow breath. Once the air in the room settled a little, I gave her a calm smile. Keep those somewhere safe. I'm just going to drop off some fresh meat at my older brother's place and I'll be right back. I knew my magical storage space was the safest place in the world for money, but putting every penny I earned into my wife's hands, that was what a real husband did. I picked up the plate and headed out. On the way, I stopped and cleared my entire debt with Uncle Huang. The moment I left, Lu Ruyan locked the front door. In their entire marriage, all she had ever known was me taking money from her. This was the first time in her life that I had walked through that door and handed her a real sum, money I had earned. The amount was significant enough that even with modest daily spending, they could survive comfortably for 2 to 3 years. She stood in the middle of that crumbling room, looking around at the walls. Then she divided the money into 5 separate portions and hid each one in a different corner of the house. By the time she was done, she heard heavy footsteps approaching from outside. She knew it was me. She opened the door, walked right past me without a word, and headed to the kitchen to get some water to wash her feet before bed. She stepped inside and froze again. The water drum was more than half full of fine white flour, the oil jar was completely full, and hanging from the ceiling was a slab of pork, 15 kilograms. 15 kilograms of meat. What kind of normal person brings home that much meat at once? Lu Ruyan's mind went completely blank. Has this man actually changed? She still couldn't fully believe it. After all, a leopard doesn't change its spots overnight. First thing the next morning, I was back on the mountain. While the ground was still soft before the hard freeze set in, I wanted to map out every spot that might be hiding Shihu herbs. If word got around by spring that I was making money off Shihu, it would become impossible to profit from them. Everyone would be up there competing, and once again, my luck held. On the way down the mountain, I found something extraordinary. A rare, old hashiwu, one of the most prized herbs in traditional Chinese medicine. Its value made Shihu look ordinary. I brought everything home and laid the herbs out on the table. Lu Ruyan looked at the ginseng-like root. She had probably read about it somewhere. With a mix of genuine awe and disbelief, she asked carefully, Is this actually hashiwu? I hadn't expected that. Her knowledge genuinely surprised me. Most people in this village had no idea what these herbs were worth, which was exactly why so many rare ones had survived up on that mountain untouched. Right now, both Shihu and hashiwu were worth serious money. In about 10 years, once agricultural technology advanced enough to cultivate them artificially, their rarity would drop. But even then, wild harvested herbs would always command sky-high prices because the real thing couldn't be faked. I grinned and said, That's exactly right. Tomorrow, I'll take you and the baby into town. We'll get out for a bit, and we can sell these at the pharmacy while we're there. The second she heard the word town, Lu Ruyan's body went rigid. The old threat came rushing back. The time I had told her I was going to sell our daughter to a childless couple in town. That fear was still very much alive inside her. She snapped into defensive mode immediately and shut it down. The baby is too young. We're not going anywhere. Go wash your hands and eat. I immediately noticed that Lu Ruyan's mood had tanked. My whole plan had just been to take her into town, let her get some air, and pick up some winter clothes. But she'd gone back on high alert, convinced I was cooking up some dark scheme to sell the baby again. The damage from my past life wasn't going to erase itself overnight. She needed time. I had to give her that. I quietly washed up and came to sit down in the room. That's when I noticed what was on the table. A plate of golden fried eggs and a small side plate with a little leftover meat from the morning. No vegetables for lunch. If she kept starving herself like this, she was never going to recover. I needed to make money faster. She needed to feel financially secure before she could ever feel mentally secure. Where did these eggs come from? I asked. Lu Ruyan kept her eyes down as she handed me a bowl of flour soup. Your mom stopped by after you left. She brought them. She didn't say a single word about the divorce her mother had been pushing for. Just the thought of it made me want to sink into the floor. I had actually taken drinking money from my own mother-in-law. The shame was so suffocating that I couldn't even bring myself to ask why she had come. There was only one thought running on a loop in my head. Tomorrow, after selling the herbs, the very first thing I was doing was paying back every cent I'd taken from her. I reached over, gently pulled Lu Ruyan toward me, and sat her down in the chair. Eat. Come on. I handed her the white flour bread and took the bigger chunk of cornbread for myself. Lu Ruyan took it and started eating slowly, stealing glances at me every few seconds when she thought I wasn't looking. If he could just stay like this. Always. Then someone started hammering on the door from outside. Hey, fourth brother, we've got 3 of us ready to go. You're the only one missing. Come on, the drinks and cards are waiting. The color drained from Lu Ruyan's face the instant she heard that. She stared at me with those wide eyes of hers, absolutely certain I was about to walk out that door. I went still for a second. Then it clicked. I remembered exactly who these people were. I set my chopsticks down. When I looked up and saw Lu Ruyan's face, pale, terrified, my chest tightened. I stood up immediately and pulled her into my arms. Hey, what's wrong? You feeling okay? The moment she was in my arms, her thin, fair fingers curled tightly into my shirt. You're going back out there with them, drinking and cards again. That's when it fully clicked. She was terrified I was sliding back into my old addictions. I softened my voice as much as I could. Don't be scared. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going out there right now to send them packing. After today, I'm done wasting time with those losers. I mean it. Still resting her head against me, Lu Ruyan looked up with doubtful eyes. You really won't go. I went straight to the courtyard gate. Standing there with a sleazy grin on his face was a guy named Luzi. Fourth brother, that's not cool, man. Your wife just got through delivery and you won't even let her out of bed. How long has it been? You can't even come have one drink with us. Something cold and dangerous flashed through my eyes. Watch your mouth when you talk to me. Clean it up, or shut it permanently. The other 2 guys who had been laughing a second ago went completely quiet the moment they saw my expression. One of them tried to smooth things over. Ah, come on, fourth brother. You know how he is. He doesn't mean anything by it. Don't take it so seriously. Let's just go grab a drink, all of us. He reached out to put a hand on my shoulder. I knocked it away and swept a cold look across all 3 of them. If any of you ever show up at my door for drinking or gambling again, don't bother coming. The deadly calm in my voice hit them like a bucket of ice water. Whatever confidence they'd walked up with vanished completely. But Luzi still hadn't wiped that disgusting smirk off his face. Without a shred of self-preservation instinct, he opened his mouth again. Wow, fourth brother, did your wife seriously not let you out of bed? Now that she's recovered, maybe us brothers could get a... Before he could finish that sentence, I drove a full-force kick straight into him. He went airborne and hit the ground flat on his back, groaning in pain. Next time that filthy mouth of yours says anything like that, I'll break your 3rd leg too. I put my foot down on him and pressed harder. Luzi writhed on the ground, howling. The other 2 just stood there with their mouths hanging open, too shocked to make a sound. A dark energy was radiating off me that in the dead of night looked like something out of a nightmare. Nobody had the guts to step in. My only real fear in that moment was Lu Ruyan coming outside. If she saw me like this, she'd be terrified all over again, and everything I've been building would unravel. I lifted my foot and looked down at Luzi. Get lost. The other 2 rushed over, hauled him up, and stumbled out as fast as they could. We're going, fourth brother, we're gone. The second they were out of sight, I let the darkness settle and walked back inside. From the moment I'd stepped out, Lu Ruyan had been sitting in the room, absolutely drowning in anxiety. Every second felt unbearable. When I didn't come back for a while, she'd convinced herself it was over, that he'd gone. Then she heard my footsteps. Her eyes locked onto the door. A few seconds later, something came back to life in those dull, hollow eyes of hers, a small, fragile light. He actually didn't go. She was still processing the shock of it when I came up behind her, wrapped my arms around her, and pressed a light kiss to her cheek. What's with that face? Forget what your husband looks like already. I was gone for 2 minutes, and you're out here missing me. Lu Ruyan still couldn't fully process what was happening. She couldn't believe I'd actually come back. Are you really not going to spend time with him anymore? She asked, without even thinking. I quickly swallowed the bite of bread in my mouth, reporting to my wife. I have officially cut all ties. No more hanging out with those guys. Ever. Now finish eating. We've got a lot of physical activity to get through tonight. Lu Ruyan caught the first half of that, let the second half fly right over her head, nodded quietly, and went back to her food. Given my past track record, she probably assumed physical activity meant I was finally going to scrub the floor or chop some wood, not initiate a romantic revival. Lu Ruyan caught the first half of that, let the second half fly right over her head, nodded quietly, and went back to her food. But she kept sneaking glances at me while she ate. I was eating fast, but there was nothing sloppy about it. With my sharp features and the way I carried myself, the whole thing looked like a scene out of a movie. When she'd first agreed to marry me, part of the reason, if she was being honest, was my looks. She had been drawn in by how I looked on the outside, and without thinking it through, had ended up with a complete deadbeat. I caught her zoning out while staring at me. I couldn't tell what was running through that head of hers. I gave her a teasing smile. Finish your food, wife. You can stare at me all you want in bed later. That snapped her right back to reality. She shot me an annoyed look, felt her cheeks go warm, ducked her head, and refocused very intently on her food. But I kept watching her. The more I looked, the more it grew. That feeling in my chest that I hadn't deserved and had thrown away so carelessly. In an era this stripped down, limited resources, barely enough food, no cosmetics, nothing, her skin was still luminous and flawless. She was more beautiful than half the top actresses I'd known in my past life. Then my eyes dropped to her hands. Her knuckles were red and swollen. I immediately took her slender hand and held it up in front of me. My mind went straight to the laundry I'd seen drying outside. Right then, I made a decision. Tomorrow, when I sold the herbs in town, I was going to track down a washing machine voucher on the black market. In this era, most people didn't even know washing machines existed, and nobody wanted to spend money on one. But once we had one, Lu Ruyan would never have to scrub clothes raw-handed again. The intensity of my stare was making her uncomfortable. She quickly pulled her hand back, muttered something, and found a reason to leave the room. The next morning, I headed out early toward town. The road was already busy with people. In this era, owning a classic 28-inch frame bicycle made you practically wealthy, so most people just walked everywhere. I moved at a solid pace and made it to town in good time, catching the first bus headed to the main city. Transportation back then was rough. A lot of people went their entire lives without ever leaving their own town. I sat by the window watching a landscape roll by, my mind running one calculation on a loop: how to generate maximum profit over the next 2 years so I'd have serious capital ready for what came after. The old bus rattled and lurched its way into the main city. Things were a little more developed here. You could already spot some three-wheeled auto rickshaws and even a handful of four-wheeled cars moving through the streets. Using my memory from my past life, I went straight to the largest traditional Chinese pharmacy in the city. The middle-aged manager there had a slightly pompous air about him, the kind of guy who sized you up before he said hello. He looked me up and down first, then picked up the Ishihu herb and examined it with careful, practiced eyes. He recognized immediately what he was looking at. Top-grade wild Ishihu. Every single root was in perfect condition. Inside, he was stunned. Where did this young kid get herbs this fresh and this high quality? He set the shihu back on the counter with a deliberate kind of care, then looked at me and asked what price I was looking for. The moment he gave me the floor, I named a big number without a second of hesitation. I already knew he'd negotiate. And sure enough, the second the price left my mouth, he understood he wasn't dealing with some clueless kid he could lowball. He immediately invited me into a private room in the back. We went back and forth for close to an hour. By the end of it, I had sold him both the jihu, the rare hashiwu, and everything else I'd brought in. Having that magical storage space was a serious advantage. I hadn't needed to worry about drying or preserving any of it. Without that, everything would have rotted and gone to waste days ago. Over the course of the negotiation, the pharmacy owner and I built a solid rapport. This guy had serious reach. Some of the biggest names in the city came to him specifically for high-quality rare goods. He had the capital to match, too. He bought out my entire inventory in one clean transaction. I walked out of that pharmacy with a thick stack of great Unity notes in my pocket.
Did you enjoy the video? Drop a like to let me know and smash the subscribe button if you want to see more. I love to hear your thoughts. Tell me your favorite moment, what you didn't like, or what I can do better next time in the comment below. Thanks for watching. Bye bye. See you in the next one.